Penn State at Ohio State, Saturday, high noon, big noon kickoff there on Fox. Once upon a Saturday tour, in the Horseshoe, we are making our long-anticipated return. Last time we were up there, it was the Michigan game. It did not go well for the home team. Let's see if it turns out any different. What if I told you this is a playoff game? What if I told you, not necessarily losers' hopes and dreams are dashed, but they take a huge blow here? Because the more it's setting up, the more it looks like it's going to be really tough for the Big Ten East to get two teams in the playoff. Some of us predicted that would happen in the preseason. Now it's looking a little tougher than it did at the outset. So I don't even want to walk you down the whole tiebreaker doomsday scenario. There is a scenario where Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all beat each other round robin style. They're all 11-1. I had producer Jesse walk me through the tiebreaker today. He got down to bullet points 5 or 6, and at that point I was already in my bottle of Tylenol. And I said, stop. We'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. I had someone tell me earlier today, as they knew I was going to break this game down, both head coaches are pretty much sitting in the same boat. Both head coaches have about the same thing to prove. You're crazy, I told him. And if anyone thinks that, you may not be a crazy person, but that is a crazy thought. Ryan Day is 35-0 in Big Ten games not facing Michigan. James Franklin's 4-14 versus Ohio State and Michigan. These are not the same coaching profiles. Now, I got immense respect for both guys, but make no mistake about it, there's a ton of pressure in all of these games. There's a lot more to prove on the side of James Franklin, I think, even than there is of Ryan Day. Now, you could come back at me and say, well, James Franklin has built his program up from scratch, whereas Ryan Day inherited what he's got in many cases from Urban Meyer. Okay, got no problem with that. I'm just saying we've seen coaches inherit programs before and then they went downhill because they weren't the real deal. Ryan Day is the real deal, 35-0 in games not featuring Michigan. And they're not interested in hearing that stat up there because they say, you can't be discounting Michigan. That's the game we care about the most in the country every year. So ironically, as we look at these defenses and we look at these ground games, ironically, I think this game's about passing the football. I think it's about throwing the football through the air. Penn State's offense is 80th in pass yards per game. Not the end-all, be-all metric. Some of you don't care at all about yards per game. I kind of don't. I was just using that as an example to show you they haven't thrown the ball all over the yard. They're 129th in explosive play rate this year. The follow-up, you don't need to yell at me from Harrisburg. I know what you're saying. The follow-up is, well, we haven't had to. And that's true. Here's what I'm asking you. If you're saying that to me right now, if you're saying, well, we, Penn State, have not had to throw the ball, my follow-up is, are you suggesting you do possess that ability? Are you suggesting you've done the whole spring game approach of, well, let's just keep the offense vanilla? If you are, we'll find out Saturday, won't we? Because if you're holding anything back, certainly this is where you debut it, right? And I think to some small degree, there may be some of that, but by and large, that's just not how they win football games. And it's served them well so far. Can you run the ball to win on Ohio State? You know, there's some people, me kind of included, that feel like maybe there's a different gear to the Penn State ground game we haven't seen yet. Can you run it to win? Not just get in the red zone, not just get in plus territory. Can you run it to win here? Ohio State's ground game, and this kind of bleeds back into why I think throwing the football is the key here. Ohio State's ground game is not going to magically find itself against Penn State. They've been decent this year, and that's about it. They have not been dominant running the ball. They're 94th in rush yards per game. There are injury concerns here, 3.7 yards per carry right now against Power 5 competition. That's not good enough to take over a game on the ground, and I don't think necessarily we're all of a sudden going to see it show up and see them figure things out Saturday. Against Notre Dame and Maryland and Purdue, though, a little ray of sunshine here. For Penn State, maybe. Ohio State did give up 176, 106, and 123. Some of those games were already out of hand, and so you make of that what you will. I got several just thoughts here. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 keys. This game's so big. I had like 19 thoughts on this, and I tried to condense it as much as I could, but I am telling you, I think it's about throwing the football to win this game. No one's going to do it to the tune of 375 yards and 4 touchdowns, mind you, but explosive plays or conversely, scrambling out of that pocket and just throw into a tight end 7.5 yards down the field to move the sticks and set yourself up for a fresh set of downs. Those sorts of things are going to matter a lot here. The pressure profiles in this game favor Penn State. What I mean by that is the ability you have shown to get after the quarterback so far this year, the ability or inability your offensive line has shown to protect the quarterback. Both of those profiles favor Penn State. Here's where you see my hand shaking a little bit. Here's where I'm a little bit hesitant. I believe in all that. I believe it's true. Penn State's been absolutely that team. Ohio State has been questionable at times. In fact, the offensive line has been very questionable. But here's what I wonder. On the other side of that, I remember this game last year. I remember who took it over. It wasn't an offensive player. It was JTT. And he took it over in a big way, and Ohio State ends up winning a game that it looks like they're done for in. Penn State had all the momentum. It feels good. And one defensive player for Ohio State takes the game over. Okay, so this is a classic case, maybe, of what has been so far this year, which is what we have on paper right now. This is what has been. Is that what will be Saturday? Or could you see them look at Olufashano at left tackle and say, well, we're not going after him, but Penn State on the right side of their offensive line looks a little more susceptible. Let's put Tuimoloau over there and let's just see what happens. And maybe he breaks a game open. Maybe he ends up with a scoop and score. Maybe he forces a couple of turnovers. And so it doesn't matter. My point is, it doesn't matter what your pressure profiles have said. If you just have a matchup that favors you, you got a matchup that favors you. And that's the kind of player that can wreck a game. Is he giving you the consistent bookend to bookend performance this year you hoped for? Maybe, maybe not, but he can take over a game like this. Another thought I had was there are going to be times in this game where Kyle McCord, that Ohio State quarterback, has just got to look down the barrel and not blink. He's going to get lit up. It will happen. It absolutely will happen. Just got to make plays. Not 24 of them, but you got to make some plays here. They're not all drop back, clean pocket, take two looks and throw that ball 50 yards down the field. It's not always going to look like that. In fact, very often it won't look like that. But he's going to have to do it enough. He's got the guys to throw it to. I don't know if he's got the offensive line to give him a ton of time. He'll have guys in his face. Can you imagine Manny Diaz, the defensive coordinator for Penn State, having all this time? They had a bye week, then they had UMass last week. And so they've been dialing things up for Ohio State for the better part of half a month now. Plus, let's be real, when we were up there, they were working on it in the spring. So it's been on the radar for a long time. I'm almost certain defenses will decide the game. Now, I don't think that's any bit of breaking news. I think most people who have watched these teams play understand that's how Ohio State played against Notre Dame, and that's probably how both of these teams will play in this game. Penn State was -4 turnovers last year in this game. So who forces them this year? There's no system out there that's going to quantify that. I got a model right here. It's as good as useless. When I ask it, who's going to win the turnover battle? That stuff's so randomized week on week. Also, starting field position. Penn State's been really, really good, near the top of the country. Ohio State hasn't been quite as good. Does that play out this Saturday? A lot of randomization over a 4-quarter game. I don't know how you watch football most of the time. I think most people follow the ball. I think most coaches try and use their peripheral, or they try and zoom out, or maybe they'll just watch the secondary, or some of you just focus on the line of scrimmage. There are different ways to watch a game. A lot of times if you coached or played, the position you played greatly determines how you watch a game. I'd encourage you to do something Saturday. If you're one who typically follows the ball, just watch Kalen King. When Penn State's on defense, watch Kalen King, watch Johnny Dixon. Those are their two corners. And just let your eyes focus on them against this wide receiver stable for Ohio State. There are going to be scouts from almost every NFL team there. And those dudes will be watching that. That's what a lot of them are going to be there for. Because you got multiple guys, both sides of the ball, that are going to be high-round draft picks, and they're not rookies. These are not true freshmen. We're not talking about 3 or 4 years down the line. They are very, very well developed, and it will be worth the price of admission, which I'm told is very, very high, but worth the price of admission, or worth your time if you're at home to watch that. This is Drew Aller's 3rd road start. Heard Ryan Day earlier today imploring the fans there in the Horseshoe to make it a hostile environment. Hey, I was in Seattle last week, so that's a hostile environment. This time last year, I was in Neyland Stadium watching Tennessee take down Bama. That was a hostile environment. There's no reason why the Buckeyes should not have that kind of edge at home against Penn State, because I guarantee you Penn State gave the home team that edge last year. It's just Ohio State's defense overcame it. What if Penn State's offense does have another gear? Just a random thought here. What if there is a different gear? What if all of a sudden the numbers on this sheet of paper in front of me, they've reached by the end of 3 quarters? You know, Penn State, I saw our buddies, college football nerds, they made an interesting point, and they were talking about yards per play. A lot of the critical metrics you look at to determine how good an offense is, Penn State is not through the roof in those metrics, and they're still beating teams handedly. And so sometimes that means you've played inferior competition, but other times that means you got a different gear you could kick it in. Or put another way, if you're already this good when you're putting up, by any discernible scale, average to above average yards per play metrics, what happens when what happens when everything's in gear one Saturday afternoon? You pull away and you blow someone out. You do what on the scoreboard Mario and Oregon did to Ohio State a couple of years ago when they came in there. That's that game. No one talks about that anymore, but that was like a jaw-dropping result where a road team out of nowhere comes in as an underdog and wins going away and ran the ball to do it in the process. So it's not my prediction. I'm just saying if that is there with Penn State, we'll know Saturday because this is the game it'll show up in. Also, Marvin Harrison's size, I think, would greatly concern me. It concerned me last year. He went for 10 and 185 against Penn State. That against those corners, like if we're talking about maybe a specific matchup advantage, Marvin Harrison's got about, 4 or 5 inches on the corner that he'll probably match up against with Penn State. Now, sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't. You get down near the red zone, you get those 50-50 balls, you get, back shoulder stuff. A lot of times that's where that comes into play a lot more than your typical slant route over the middle. I think, obviously, Ohio State and Penn State both aware of that. But Kyle McCord versus Manny Diaz is another thing that I can't get out of my head. I'm thinking about Ohio State on third down, 5+, obvious passing downs. I'm thinking about what Manny Diaz, the defensive coordinator for Penn State, can potentially bait him into, because you got a couple of young quarterbacks here in terms of starting experience. And that's why I keep going back to turnovers, special teams play, but really turnovers, defensive scoring, that kind of stuff deciding this game is why it's so hard to pick. So hard to pick because nobody predicts that stuff. It's hard enough to predict games as it is. You don't have a model that predicts that. Just like you don't have a model that said JTT was going to do what he did in this game last year. But having said that, Colin, let's take a look at what the model does think. The Vegas number right now is Ohio State -4.5. We've got Ohio State -6.5 in the model. So I went back and forth like 4 times today. Producer Jesse, and this will shock you, has a pretty strong feel on this game. Producer Jesse walked in with, 4 pages of notes, 5 pages of notes? The over hit in terms of pages of notes for Jesse, and he's on the Nittany Lions. There was a time about 3:45 or 4 o'clock today, I was Penn State. And then again, in the 5 o'clock hour, I went Penn State. But I ended up landing on Ohio State. Pretty simple feeling here. Went to the model, because I don't have a strong feel. I'm just happy to be there. I went to the model, and if we've got a team power rated ahead of another team and they have home field advantage, I'll go with them. That's really the long and short of it. There are many, many paths I see for Penn State winning this game. There are many, maybe a couple more for Ohio State winning this game. I'll take Ohio State to win it. I guess I'll take them to cover. I don't have any feel. No dimes will be bet out of my pocket on this game. Really looking forward to this. This is what we've been waiting for. This right here in the Big Ten is what we've been waiting for. The shirt that we have for this game is already sold a great deal. I think it will continue to sell a great deal. The Once Upon a Saturday tour heading to Columbus, Ohio at Ohio Stadium this Saturday. This is available right now. PateStateMaterial.com. It's gone Saturday night. We're done. It'll never be sold again. So I don't know that we'll be back at Ohio State this year. Maybe one stop only for us up there this year. In fact, I'm fairly certain it will be. So if you want to commemorate it, there it is, PateStateMaterial.com. It's right there on the front page right now. Those always go really fast because we only sell them for 1 week at a time.